Hello, thank you for taking the time to look at this segment of a 9-part series that I'm putting out there just to try to generate some discussion on what it is that we would like for our politicians to accomplish in Washington, other than simply investigate each other, depending on who is in office. So I put down some thoughts on 9 areas that I would like for the parties to address in their platforms going forward as we head into the 2024 election, which now we're in a 2-year election cycle all the time. I hope that some of this stuff is accomplished before then, but at the very least, I hope that each party considers these topics and others. Look forward to getting your feedback on this and other ideas that you might have so that we can continue this discussion here and with whomever else you might come into contact. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate your feedback. Congressional service. One of the things that has come up from time to time over the years is an emphasis or a highlight on how Congress people pass laws that exempt them from the same laws that are expected or applied to the rest of America. One of the ideas being that the degree to which Congress people are representatives of the districts, the states from which they are sent to Washington to serve on behalf of the people, they ought to be subject to the same laws they're expecting everyone else to follow, rather than passing laws that are more favorable to their interest as individuals who happen to be serving in Congress, rather than recognizing them as individuals who are also citizens of the United States, like everyone else who is expected to pass the laws that they pass. So I would suggest there be a review and we pass a law whereby Congress people will not be exempted from the laws they pass, and we apply that law retroactively. Now, there may be situations where we need to pass a law specific to Congress people. For example, one of the challenges that came up recently was the idea that, and in fact, not only Congress people, but others with information or access to information related to stocks should not be allowed to trade on the stock exchange. Or I guess I should say, with respect to business law and laws that would affect company and business entities, industries, that Congress people and those who serve in Congress who are privy to the discussions and the direction the law is likely to go would not be able to trade on the stock exchange. So there are certain things that would be passed to help protect Congress people from themselves and the temptation they or those close to them might face with respect to taking advantage of their position as Congress people. But by and large, any law that Congress deems as valid for the people of the United States would also be valid for them as Congress people. Congressional investigations. Legislation should be enacted to establish an independent standing body to investigate accusations by members of Congress against elected officials, their employees, and those appointed by elected officials, such as, but not limited to, judges, cabinet members, and czars. It seems to me that we spend way too much time now hearing about how the legislature is investigating misdeeds. And it's always a matter of the party in power investigating the other party. So that as soon as you have, as we just did in the midterm elections, a transition of the House from one party to the other, we've heard more about investigations than we have about legislation. The degree to which Congress is empowered to conduct investigations, to facilitate its understanding of a matter with respect to developing law is one thing. The degree to which Congress is conducting investigations with respect to determining whether somebody else in Congress acted illegally, that's yet another thing. The degree to which Congress is conducting investigations just to score political points is yet another thing. And to my mind, the latter two are not a good use of congressional time and energy. And not only are they not a good use of congressional time and energy, they are a destructive mechanism when it comes to the effective functioning of Congress to develop laws in a context where you have people with different opinions, different base assumptions coming together to try to determine how, in fact, to put together legislation that is in the best interest of the American people. Quarterly reports should be provided by this body that's been established to keep Americans appraised of what's going on in the investigative side of Congress. Not because Republicans are investigating Democrats or Democrats are investigating Republicans, but because this independent body is saying, here are the reports that we have received, the requests that we have received, the potential for wrongdoing that we have been asked to investigate, and these are the results. So, what issues were submitted for review? If a congressperson thinks that somebody else has done something incorrectly and they're asked this body to investigate, that becomes part of the report. What issues were rejected for review and why? Congressperson A might request that Congressperson B be investigated, and when this committee launches their initial investigation, they realize it was simply so that Congressperson A could score political points in a campaign against Congressperson B, or vice versa. And so there needs to be a mechanism by which the American people can identify if they're the investigative committee is being used in what's the term I'm looking for? Being used in not unjust, but in without intent, with the wrong intent, with towards an end for which it was not intended. What judgments were finalized in the previous quarter? So, if Congress opens an investigation into somebody and there are ethics violations, then what were the violations and what was the penalty? If Congress people are going to act in violation of the rules and standards that have been established for them, then they ought to be held accountable to the public because they're making rules and laws for the public. And finally, what penalties were assessed against congressional or party campaign funds for frivolous filings? And this gets back to number 2. It may be that Congressperson A honestly thought that Congressperson B had done something wrong, but upon further investigation, there was nothing untoward that happened. But if Congressperson A persistently files reports or requests for investigation against members of the other party as just a means of harassment, then that congressperson ought to be penalized with perhaps the only thing that they might pay attention to, and that's fined against their reelection campaign coffers, campaign funds. So the whole way Congress relates to each other, I think, needs to be looked at because we've entered a period where, and the pandemic only highlighted this, but we've entered a period where instead of Congress people agreeing to disagree and disagreeing civilly in public, but meeting and getting together and having a chance to talk without any baggage brought to the table when they address these issues that they should be addressing as Congress people. They're spending all their time digging up dirt on each other and trying to prove each other guilty of things, which at best doesn't facilitate good conversation when they should be debating issues, laws that affect the American people. Another area